So welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Mattie McGrath TD, and we're going to be speaking to him about a couple of pieces of legislation that are currently in the process of being sent through the Oireachtas. So it's very good to speak to you today, Mattie.
Indeed, Ben. How are you all there?
Doing fantastic. It's great up here in Dublin. We're glad to hear from you again. So this legislation that we're talking about, in a nutshell, what do people need to know about it? What are the key points?
Well, to be fair, it's rushed, yes. So has all the situation since we first saw COVID on our island and saw our Taoiseach at the time in Washington addressing the people. But everything since has been rushed and haphazard. But more dangerously, from a legislative point of view, none of the previous four pieces of legislation which are there, the Health Amendment Act 2021 was the most recent, and Part 3 to help preservation and protection and other emergency measures in the public interest 2020, and the Health Act Amendment Act 2020 again, Criminal Justice COVID-19 Enforcement Powers Act 2020. So there's four previous pieces of what I call cobbled together rushed legislation. None of it with legislative scrutiny by the relevant committees. All rushed. We've known about this now, or hinting about this piece with the last probably 8-10 days. I'm shocked to think that the relevant committee has waived pre-legislative scrutiny on this. And while many of the pieces in this new bill, which I don't have to hand, all I have is I got, as Gript of the Rural Independent Group, I got a briefing yesterday evening about 3:30, briefing note, which I have in my hands. But the most worrying one here, which is in the previous ones, is that an official, the Department of Health official, will have, if the minister chooses, designated powers to, if he feels or she feels fit, that a person may be a threat to the spread of COVID or infection, that they can have them arrested and incarcerated. And there's no out clause here. And I hope to put an amendment here, because in previous legislation, I'm advised that, under the Mental Health Act and others, where people are having difficulties, maybe psychotic attack or whatever, if for their own safety and the safety of others, a medical person, normally a doctor in that case, it doesn't prescribe in the bill who this person is going to be or what standing, may invoke the Gardaí, may invoke the Act and have a person incarcerated. But they have the right to appeal, and they have a right after 14 days to appeal. This doesn't say where, specify where. It's not going to be in a hospital, or maybe in a hospital, but maybe elsewhere. We don't know where the elsewhere is. We don't know is there any right of appeal. It doesn't seem to be in this, so I hope to be able to amend it if it's going to be accepted. I think it should, because this is a horrific piece of legislation. Otherwise, look, again, it's rushed, and it's dangerous legislation, setting an awful dangerous precedent. In 2020.
So sorry to cut you off. Sorry to cut you off there, Mattie. So just for the sake of clarity, just so that people at home understand, if you could repeat again the legislation in a nutshell, the fact that you're saying medical personnel and the state in general will be able to order the detention of people who are considered able to spread COVID-19. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes. I mean, what's included in the briefing notes, and I haven't seen the bill, but obviously it's in the briefing notes sent to me by the department, so I expect it to be in the bill, is that a person, designated person by the minister in the health, working in the health area, can decide if a person or persons, or indeed an area could be closed down, or indeed those persons can be arrested and can be detained. In hospital settings, we know that's already in existing legislation, but there's also other unspecified areas of detention. And worse than that, you have no right to appeal. In the other cases, you can insist on, if it's mental health under the old acts, that's going back down for decades. Since 1947, I think you have the choice and the right to get a second medical opinion and to get legal assistance to fight your case. This case, you just, on the whim or the opinion of a medical person, thinks that you're a threat to the spread of COVID infection or you're carrying infection, you may be arrested and detained without any definition of where, when, or for how long.
So you said obviously that something similar to this was in the previous COVID legislation and that this has existed for a while, but this is coming as news to a lot of people, even now at this late stage of the game, 20 months into the pandemic and the lockdown and everything else. A lot of people weren't aware that this was on the books or something like this was already the law. What do you think that says about the level of transparency surrounding this legislation?
There has been no transparency. There's no proper legal scrutiny because I believe that issues like that wouldn't get through proper pre-legislative legal scrutiny. A cloak and dagger situation, but people are aware and should be aware and must be aware that the minister had extraordinary powers bestowed on himself with all these different acts, the 4 previous acts, and now wants to extend it right into March of 2021, with a possibility of extending it to late June 2021. So this is very, very serious. Why now, 20 months later, are we having this consolidated in one piece of legislation, having clearly stated there, as I said, without any definitions? Every piece of legislation has to have a definition for each act and each prescribed item. This doesn't, not in this briefing notes, and I doubt if they'll have it in the act either, as to how long a person is detained from, how qualified is the person that's detaining them, that's making the order, and in what field, and what right of appeal, and what recourse to justice the person or persons, or indeed an area maybe, shut down or closed down. What rights to have a person in business, a person just trying to raid their family, or whatever. Like, it's all one-sided with no recourse to proper justice. And I believe in innocent and proven guilty. This is a dangerous piece of legislation, and it will be dangerous because, as I said, you have no right to appeal, and no rights seems to have legal or medical representation.
The briefing paper that I read, it said something to the effect of anybody who is suspected of being able to spread COVID, which, I mean, does that not include everybody, vaccinated, unvaccinated? I mean, surely everybody has the potential to spread COVID. As we know, even being double jabbed doesn't prevent you from spreading it. So this seems like it's very wide reaching in that sense.
This is the worry, as I said, 20 months on, that we haven't been able to bring it down to, finite areas, be more prescriptive in legislation. Legislation is not prescriptive in any case. It can be challenged quite easily in the courts. And there are a number of challenges pending to previous legislation that we have since March 2020, but they've been delayed and prevaricated in the courts. So this needs to be challenged. And Alliance for Justice and Tracy O'Mahony and others are issuing challenges and finding these issues out. But the government seems to think on the cloak of fear that the public in Ireland will accept anything. I'm thinking, and I'm finding, that we have a more questioning public now, 20 months on, because they see the figures are so high now. They see the impact on social, economic, and indeed the mental and physical health in other areas have been so badly affected with COVID. They see the 3.884 billion extra that was invested into the HSE on top of the 20 billion odd that they had anyway for 2020. And they see the lack of capacity. I think 30 extra beds in ICU, if I'm right. Don't even know if they're fully staffed. So all this money is going down the drain. People's businesses are being ruined. People's lives are being ruined. And indeed, the health service is falling apart. And we want to introduce this carte blanche check to the Minister of Health, kind of this into summer 2021. I think it's draconian, it's Dickensian. I can't get adjectives to describe it. It's only tell you that a minister is and the subcommittee are obviously being set and led by NEFIT and others, and are not thinking straight and having any impact analysis after the impact and devastation that if this act could wreak on families and people and communities if they get away with it.
We now have advice from NEFIT around the masking of young children in schools and other settings like that. What do you think of that advice?
I'm perplexed and confused because I stopped watching actually RTE especially, but I'm tired of watching broadcasts from senior, very, very senior, the most senior people in NEFIT over the 20 months, where we were all the time told, and it's on video record, they can't deny it, that schools were safe places. Schools were safe places. How are we such a flip about now? Turned now I know that they're under some pressure from the INTO, but I also know that HICWA were engaged to do reports, 3 or 4 reports to date, 3 certainly, if not 4, the last being last September, about these issues of masks for children. And HICWA have withstood the pressures from NEFID, and there are people on NEFID and HICWA, and some of the same people, which is very, very strange as well. They have rejected the idea. Now, for some reason or other, NEFID have gone over the heads of HICWA and gone directly to their weakest chain, weakest link they find, and namely Micheál Martin, Leo Varadkar, Stephen Donnelly, et al. And they're the people that seem to be making the decision for those people. They are the elected government, and they should be making decisions, not NEFID. And this is going on too far. And I'm asking people to check out these facts. HICWA have blocked this 3 times or refused to engage with it. Now they've been, I suppose, shoved aside. Yet that HICWA, same HICWA, will send in inspectors in every nursing home in the country and smaller hospitals and close them down and do whatever. And look, we accept that. But now when they're not, you know what I mean, it's like the referendum that we had in Nice and Nice too. HICWA have suggested 3 times, definitely, that this was not a good idea, good practice. I shudder to think of the teachers. I shudder to think of children that may be shy or maybe special needs or maybe in any way, restricted in speech or language. And we know how hard it is to get speech and language therapy. So this is going to make it much more difficult. I got an email from a teacher this morning, appalled at the thought of it, because it's just especially when, as far as I know, there hasn't been one child dead under the age of 12 from this virus.
Well, thank you so much, Mattie. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, and thanks for all your outlet.